Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you'd build them a future without them even knowing? This is not a love story filled with grand gestures or luxurious gifts. It's a quiet, humble tale buried in the mountains, where every brick tells a story of love, sacrifice, and the home we all long for. In a remote village embraced by misty hills and rows of silent trees, Jack and Tien lived a life many would call simple, yet deeply meaningful. They weren't rich. There were no expensive cars, no marble floors. Their days started with the crow of the rooster and ended under a sky filled with stars. Yet, there was warmth in their smiles, in their shared meals, in the silent understanding between them. Tien was a village girl, strong, grounded, and radiant in her own way. She had never gone to university, never worked in an office, but she knew the soil, the seeds, the rhythm of the land. Jack, on the other hand, was different. A builder by heart, he had come from elsewhere, yet found home in this village, perhaps because he found Tien. Together, they worked the fields, harvested fruit, and sold melons at the market. Life wasn't easy, but Jack saw something in Tien, a quiet resilience, a giving heart, and a woman worth building the world for. And so, without saying a word, he began to lay the foundation for something bigger, something she would never see coming. One rainy afternoon, as Jack and Tien made their way back from the market, fate intervened. At the edge of the road, hunched beneath a broken umbrella, stood a man Tien hadn't seen in years, her former father-in-law. Once a figure of quiet strength, now reduced to fragile bones and torn clothes, he was dragging a bundle of firewood, rain dripping from his weathered face. Tien froze. Her breath caught. Memories came flooding back. His kindness, the way he treated her like a daughter even after the divorce, the silent dinners, the shared struggles. He had always stood by her. But now, he had no one. "That's him," she whispered to Jack. Without a second thought, Jack pulled the truck to the side. They stepped out into the rain. No grand reunion, no tears, just a quiet understanding. Tien reached for the firewood, and Jack, without saying a word, wrapped his jacket around the old man's shoulders. They brought him back to the farm. It wasn't a decision. It was instinct. At the farmhouse, they offered him a warm meal, a dry place to sleep. Jack didn't ask many questions. He simply listened as the man shared how his son had squandered the family home, how his life had crumbled under the weight of addiction and neglect. Tien felt torn. This man had once been family, but could she still carry that weight? Jack looked at her and said, "It doesn't matter whose father he is. What matters is that he needs us now." That night, the three of them sat under a single dim light bulb, eating simple rice and soup, the rain tapping gently on the tin roof, a quiet reunion that would change everything. That night, after the dishes were washed and the rain had finally softened, Jack sat alone on the front steps of the farmhouse. The candle inside flickered against the thin curtains, casting dancing shadows. Tien was tucking the old man into bed, gently placing a blanket over him. Jack watched quietly. He had seen people talk about love, post about it, write songs about it. But rarely did he see someone live it the way Tien did. Her care was not loud, not theatrical. It was in the way she poured tea, in the way she remembered someone's back pain, and how she gave, not out of obligation, but of heart. Jack made a decision that night. No announcement, no big speech. Just a quiet vow to himself. She deserves more. She deserves a home, not just a shelter. A place that is truly hers. And I'll build it. But not just that. He knew the old man, once dignified, now displaced, couldn't go back to the streets. So the plan evolved: 2 homes. One dream. A rebuilt farm for Tien, and a dignified space for her former father-in-law to live safely, without burden. The next morning, Jack disappeared early. When he returned, his hands were dirty, his boots muddy, but there was a glint in his eyes. He had started scouting land, asking questions, calculating costs. It wouldn't be easy. He didn't have much money, but he had a will stronger than bricks, and he knew people who owed him favors. Still, he kept it secret from Tien. To her, it looked like Jack was just working on a small renovation. But in truth, he was designing a future, one she hadn't dared to imagine. With the old man now safe at the farm, life settled into a new rhythm. Each morning, Tien woke early. While dew still clung to the grass, she gathered ripe melons and vegetables into a bamboo basket, tied her headscarf, and walked several kilometers to the village market. Her hands were rough from work, her face sun-kissed from years under the sky, but there was something radiant about her now. A quiet joy, a new purpose. Jack would sometimes walk her to the edge of the field, pretending he had errands nearby. He always carried her basket halfway, even though she insisted she could handle it. She didn't know that while she was selling melons for a few coins, Jack was sketching walls, calling suppliers, and meeting builders behind the scenes. Back at the farm, the old man grew stronger. He cooked simple meals, tended to small repairs, and sat quietly in the sun. He never asked for anything, and in return, Jack made sure he lacked nothing. One evening, as Tien returned from the market, a soft breeze in her hair and dirt on her skirt. She handed Jack a small envelope. "This is for you," she said. "Not much, but I want to help build the farm." Jack opened it. Inside were wrinkled bills, perhaps enough to buy a few sacks of cement. But it wasn't the amount that moved him, it was her heart. She had no idea he was already building something far beyond what she imagined. He smiled and said, "We'll build it together." And that night, as the stars blinked awake above them, a new life quietly took root. To everyone around him, Jack was just fixing up the old farm. A few repairs here, some soil added there. Nothing out of the ordinary. But behind closed doors and beneath stacks of sketches, a different plan was unfolding. Jack had quietly met with a local builder named Duong, someone he trusted. They examined every corner of the plot, the slope of the land, the drainage system, the foundation strength. He didn't want to just repair the farm, he wanted to transform it. His vision? A new home, nestled safely on higher ground, immune to flood, open to light, and strong enough to last generations. A home for Tien, a home she didn't even know was being built for her. But as construction began, trouble arose. One morning, Jack stood before a half-finished wall, only to realize the base had started to sink. The foundation was laid on borrowed soil, unstable and unsafe. The wall bulged, threatening to collapse. It was a setback, a costly one. But Jack didn't flinch. He halted the work immediately. "I'll fix it," he told Duong. "No shortcuts." He brought in a structural engineer. Together, they redrew parts of the plan. Jack covered the cost himself. He refused to let Tien's future rest on faulty ground. Every night, he returned home muddy, exhausted, but determined. And every night, when Tien asked how his day was, he simply smiled and said, "Just building a few things." He was building more than she knew, more than a house. He was building proof that love doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it lays bricks in silence. Jack never planned to reveal anything, not until the last tile was laid, not until the scent of fresh paint lingered in the air. But life, as it often does, had other ideas. One afternoon, while discussing the renovation permits with the village chief, Jack let something slip. A half-sentence, almost accidental. "I just want the house to be ready before she finds out." The chief looked up, puzzled. "She? You mean?" Tien. Jack froze for a second. Then, seeing no point in pretending, he nodded. "I'm building it for her. She doesn't know yet." The old man leaned back in his chair, a smile forming slowly. "You know, not many men do what you're doing. She's lucky. But you're luckier." Word spread quietly. The village chief connected Jack with the owner of the adjacent land. It turned out that the farm's lower area, where floods often struck, could be exchanged for a safer plot above, something Jack had dreamed of but didn't think possible. Deals were made. Plans were drawn. Jack poured in every last bit of his savings. Not for grandeur, not for pride, but for the simple peace of knowing that the woman he loved and the man she now cared for like family would be safe, together. He even thought of the old man. The lower land, once renovated, could become his. A place of dignity, of stability. Slowly, the pieces were falling into place. But Tien still didn't know. Every time she asked why Jack came home late, he'd say, "Just clearing out the field." And each time, he wondered how she'd react when she found out. Would she be surprised? Would she cry? Would she finally see what Jack had been building not just with his hands, but with his heart? "Come with me," Jack said one morning, his voice calm but unreadable. Tien, still holding her market basket, tilted her head. "Where are we going?" Jack smiled. "Just trust me." They walked up a path she hadn't noticed before, winding through tall grass, past the field she thought marked the edge of their land. Higher, quieter, clearer. The air smelled different here, crisper, freer. And then, at the crest of the hill, it appeared. A house. Not large, not luxurious, but strong, bright, beautiful. Built from the ground up, resting on stable earth, wrapped in softwood and clean lines. Still unfinished, but unmistakably hers. Tien stopped in her tracks. She looked at Jack, eyes wide, lips parted, but no words came. Her heart pounded. Her hands trembled. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. Jack stepped forward. "I wanted to wait until it was done," he said, voice softer than ever. "But I couldn't anymore. This is for you, Tien. Your home. Our home. I built it so you'd never have to wonder where you belong." Tears welled in her eyes. Her knees gave slightly, and Jack reached to steady her. She touched the wooden frame, then looked around. The kitchen window faced east, just like she always said she liked. The back porch opened to the lake. A small room in the corner, she knew it was for her stepfather. "You did all this? Without telling me?" Jack smiled. Not everything needs to be spoken to be real. She laughed through her tears, holding on to him like she never wanted to let go. "I've never had anything like this," she whispered. "Now you do," he said. "And you always will." And in that moment, under the morning sun, beside the house built by quiet love, they stood, hand in hand, not just as two people in love, but as a family finally home.